Today I'm going to talk to you about a man who was hugely influential in Britain and elsewhere, but he's probably a man you've never heard of. He was called Lucius Septimius Severus. He became emperor in Rome towards the end of the 2nd century AD, and he became emperor after one of Rome's most notorious political acts, and that was the bidding war for empire between Pertinax and Didius Julianus. They basically promised money in increasing amounts to soldiers in the Praetorian Guard to hail them as emperor. So it was the day the empire was for sale. Anyway, when Julianus became emperor, because he promised the soldiers 25,000 sesterces each, the soldiers elsewhere in the empire rose up against all this, and Severus, who was at the time governor of Pannonia, which is more or less Hungary, was hailed as emperor and then began a march on Rome. He was an interesting character. He'd had a fairly straightforward military career up until that point, but he's notable because he was an African. He came from Lepkes Magna, which is now in Libya. It still has some of the most well-preserved and evocative archaeological remains anywhere in the Roman Empire, as some of these illustrations by a fabulous photographer, Don McCullin, will show. Anyway, Severus marched on Rome. When he got to Rome, he made sure that he was going to be remembered. Now, he had long suspected that, according to the source, that he was going to become emperor. He was a great believer in astrology, and so he'd consulted astrologers from being quite young as to what was going to happen to him, and they predicted great things, as I guess they would if you paid him enough. Anyway, he was once accused of asking astrologers whether he was going to be emperor or not, and he said he hadn't done that, and the man who'd accused him of this lost a court case and was then crucified. So I guess that showed at a reasonably early age in his political career he was not a man to be messed with. Anyway, he went to Rome. He was hailed by the Senate as the emperor, paid off a lot of his friends' debts. He sorted out the grain supply, which was pretty important in Rome. The grain supplies were running low. He knew that people rebel if you don't feed them properly, so he saw to it the grain supply, the annona, was sorted out. He was worried that Claudius Albinus, who was at the time governor of Gaul and Britain, would become a rival for him. So Albinus had also made a claim to the emperor, to be emperor, so he set off west, and there was a battle. This took place in Lyon, and Albinus lost, so he was killed, and Septimius Severus had rubbed out one of his rivals. Leading up to that, both Albinus and Severus had minted lots and lots of coins with various things on them, so coinage was being used as propaganda. And it's interesting that they took that to a new level, and that has been, of course, done ever since, with coins being minted from time to time for major political events, like recently the Brexit coin that was never issued because Brexit didn't happen when it was going originally scheduled to. Anyway, when he returned to Rome, he decided he was going to go there briefly, and then he went to North Africa. And he went to his hometown and he initiated a massive building project, which is how it became the third biggest city in the whole of the Roman Empire in North Africa. In the very late years of the 2nd and early years of the 3rd century, there were major problems in Britain, and this is the main thing I want to think about. Albinus had withdrawn a number of troops from Britain, and so the northern tribes had taken the opportunity to rebel. Now, at this point, the Romans had occupied lowland Scotland up as far as what was now the Antonine Wall, which ran more or less from Glasgow to Edinburgh, and so Rome had extended its territory but didn't have enough troops to cope with that. So One of the things that Severus did when he came to Britain and campaigned was he withdrew back to the line of Hadrian's Wall, and this involved a large-scale rebuilding of Hadrian's Wall to such an extent that for many centuries it was believed that it wasn't Hadrian's Wall at all, but it was actually the wall of Septimius Severus. Now, although he'd paid his soldiers a great deal of money and he was a pretty efficient general, he discovered that the northern weather didn't suit him too much, and despite his success as a campaigner and as a politician, he then died in York in 211 AD. So there's a particular Yorkshire connection for an African emperor there. So what do we learn from all of this? Well, when he died, he knew that he was going to be succeeded by his two sons, Caracalla and Geta, and he was worried that they were going to fight and it was going to end up bloody, and indeed it turned out to be. Severus had a huge arch built in his honour, but Caracalla and Geta, despite what Severus, the instructions he gave them, which are quoted by Dio Cassius, things went rapidly downhill, and Caracalla turned out to be an absolute butcher of lots of people, including his own brother Geta. The instructions that Severus gave to his sons on his deathbed were three. The first one was, do not disagree. The second was, enrich the soldiers. And the third was, despise everyone else. So in terms of his success in this, did his sons disagree? Yes, they did, and one killed the other. Did he enrich the soldiers? Yes, he did, despite what had happened with the empire being for sale, which is how he came to be hailed as emperor in the first place. Did he despise everyone else? Well, perhaps not. But I wonder how many leaders ever since have done that, about enriching the soldiers and despising everyone else. So what was he like as a leader? Well, he left an impression. He left an impression in coinage and the message of the propaganda value of coinage, and he left a message in buildings, including Hadrian's Wall and, posthumously, the massive Arch of Septimius Severus in the Forum, which was used, the space underneath the arch was used as a barber shop during the Middle Ages, so a bit of a come down on that. The second thing was that despite some successes, he never quite succeeded in conquering the north, so I guess message there is don't mess with stroppy northerners. And the third thing is, however much you pay soldiers, it doesn't in the long term bring you health.